Welcome to People Are Everything, the show that's a bit like Desert Island Discs, but rather than bring music, I ask my guests to bring the 5 people that have shaped the person they are today. And today you're going to meet Matt Zeigler, and you are in for a treat. I first met Matt through a joint, I suppose, podcaster, which was Mark McCartney, who was my first guest. Matt is a podcaster too. He's also a writer. He works in the sort of financial services. And as you'll come to see, he has a wonderful hat. So please just enjoy this conversation. It's very real. It's very poignant. And he's taken this format to a whole different level. And, I was just absolutely blown away by this conversation, as I know you will be. So please sit back, get yourself comfortable, and I bring you Matt Zeigler. Hello, Matt. Welcome to People Are Everything. Matt, you have a hat, which I love. I want one. Why don't I have a hat?
This is a one-on-one. I can put in a special order request. Rumor is they're for sale. Rumor is, but special orders only.
When you say one of one, someone's made it for you. Then is that
this is a custom job, handmade, hand knitted. There's a couple of different options, but as soon as I saw this one with the colors, I was like, that one's mine.
Well, anyone listening and not watching, switch to YouTube now, because then you can see.
Oh yeah, hat. Yeah. We got props for this conversation, Julie. If you think you can ask me to have a conversation about 5 people and I'm not coming with props, you don't know me very well.
And you're also somebody. I keep mentioning this to people on my podcast because I'm actually deeply, deeply intimidated by people who stack books behind them, and I'm going to get myself a bookshelf.
Why are you intimidated?
I don't know. I just feel I'm very unacademic. I left school like. I don't know. I didn't think I really even went, to be honest. But when I did go, it was mostly just see my friends. But I have a kind of probably a little bit of an insecurity about academic people. So when I see stacks and stacks of books, I straighten up slightly like this. And I think, well, I better bring my A game. Matt looks like a really smart guy. And I know you are.
Bring your A game. But suffice it to say, this is me, and I'm sure we'll get into some of this too, not doing very well in school either, and trying to plug lots of holes. And there's a lot of fiction on those shelves if you squint closely, and fun autobiographies too. So,
all right, well, we'll get into that. Good. Well, listen, it's great to have you. We met. The connection with us, I think, is Mark McCartney, isn't it? Because I think you've had him on one of your podcasts, and we'll get into that. Is that Just Press Record, which I love, by the way. I've listened to a few of them now, and I love the concept, and I hope you're going to talk more about it. And then I think you liked one of my podcasts. I liked one of yours. I think I did that brave thing and wrote to you and said, I have a podcast. You have a podcast. Let's be on each other's. So I'm hoping to be a guest on yours at some point. And thank you for agreeing to be on mine. So before we get into your 5, why don't you share with everybody listening who you are and what you're all about?
Man, I have an existential crisis. And to be fair, with Mark McCartney, Mark, great human being, and now we've both interacted with him separately, virtually, and all that stuff. He also was like, you have to meet this Julia person.
Oh, did he?
I think she would be a great Just Press Record guest.
Oh, amazing.
She's got an ability to talk to people. And then when I found out, because you reached out, that you're doing this, where both of us have this thing where we like connecting people and not networking in the icky, let's pass business cards to each other sense, in the, hey, there's a lot of interesting people in the world. If you could just shut up and let them talk for a second, you might find out something that's not boring or offensive or dreadful.
Oh, so I'm touched by that. Thank you, Mark McCartney, if you're listening. I'm really
make sure
pleased
he's
with
listening.
That. Yeah, super. All right.
Me in a nutshell is currently my primary role is I am a wealth advisor, a financial advisor, which is a financial planner, or whatever word you want to call it in whatever corner of the world you have. We have a small side of big side of small firm. We work with family offices all the way down to regular people with businesses and startups. And we do big fancy stuff and really basic consulting work on helping people get stuff together and off the ground. But sort of my superpower in the middle of all this and how I ended up in this business is I really like talking to people and extracting the story for what they're trying to accomplish from them, and then marshaling the resources around them to get that stuff done. How do we make the future you actually want to accomplish? If that involves attorneys and accountants and other fancy things and private investors and whatever, great. I've made a network of those people over the years, and kind of just like with my clients, just like them, I'm really good at shape-shifting and speaking their languages. And a big reason for that is because I wasn't trying to be in the industry that I ended up in my entire life. And we kind of bonded over this talking before. I have a background in music.
Yeah.
I was a musician. I was touring and working in studios and stuff up until my early 20s, when I had a bit of a mental break with I need something boring to do. But I spent the first 23, 25 years of my life basically learning how to like imitate people, sound like stuff, make stuff sound like other stuff, walk into any room, get along with anybody, win a group of strangers over that you've never met before, in like a bar in front of a ski resort or something. That's my entire life, was training to do that type of stuff. So you drop me in financial services, and where's my brain going to go? Like, great, I just need to entertain people and have a good time. And once I accepted I was practiced at that, stuff started to work out.
But I think that's one of the things that drew me to you as well, which is I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and you've got that rare blend of, there's a core business there. Your business matters to you. You do a lot of promotion on there about your business and your work, but you blended yourself perfectly with it. So I've noticed, it's very heartwarming. You have pictures of your anniversary with your great wife. You talk about all the other things that you're working on. And, it's kind of an aspiration of mine. I have tentatively blended those things, but you seem to be very wholehearted about it. And it's an aspiration of mine to be that way as well. I feel like I talk a lot about whole self, like bringing your whole self to work. And I coined this phrase of, you shouldn't leave yourself at the door and then reoccupy yourself on the way out when you're in your workplace. But you seem to have done that very comfortably online. And I really like that. I just wanted to say that to you, really.
I appreciate that. And I will also say what you see today is many, many, many years in the making, because up until literally 2.5 years ago, I was working for a company where all this was barred. So anything you see today, if you looked at me right now, you're seeing where I am only 2.5 years into this journey. And I would say it's even shorter than that, because a lot of my personal stuff, like that Just Press Record podcast, I think it's a year old in another 2 months. I'm at 10 months or 11 months right now. There's a ton of stuff that is brand new to me sharing. And I've just kind of hit the point, I don't know, maybe it was like getting into my 40s a little bit or whatever, but saying, you're going to hire me because you want to hire me. And, yes, I am a capitalist. Like, I'm happy to make money if you want to hire me for stuff. But at the same time, it's better for you to understand what you get. And the other thing I've realized, and hopefully you'll realize as you start to share more of that too, is when you put yourself out there and you say, this is what you get when you work with me, you start to attract people that actually want to work with you for those reasons.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm in a profile business, the kind of work I do. And I've noticed that, I'm just meeting, really, really interesting and relevant people through this. And it's given me an excuse to kind of reach out to anybody, which I love. And I feel like I don't think there's anybody I can't reach out to and talk to on this subject. So, because everybody wants to talk about the people that matter to them. People are much more comfortable talking about other people, actually, than they are about themselves.
Indeed, they are.
I feel like I've got the winning formula of kind of giving people a space to talk about themselves, but through the eyes of, or the experiences of, other people. So before we get into our 5, my first question is always, how did you find the process of choosing your 5?
So see, as a British person, you're going to bring Desert Island Discs into this.
I am.
And I respect that completely. And as an avid fan of, both the Nick Hornsby High Fidelity book, but also of the movie where the great John Cusack steps in to take over as Rob Gordon. Rob Gordon, I think, is the character name in the U.S. version. It's a much more British name in the original book. And as a curator of many, many a mixtape and many, many a playlist, the Desert Island Discs thing, I look at and I go, there's so many ways you have to solve this problem. So I had to pick a topical direction to solve this. And what I zeroed in on is the true desert island question is basically the desert is a place you have been complete stripped of life and you're on this desert by yourself. And the only way to survive on that desert by yourself, if you're going to be stuck there and you can't actually get off, is you got to make life new again. So I'm coming from the approach of my top 5 are all deceased.
Okay.
And they're 5 people that I know I carry with me forward every single day to try to make the world around me better. And that's how I chose these 5 people. And it was a wonderful exercise. And I may have cried way too many times on this list, but we're going to get through it.
That's unique. I haven't had anybody with that approach, and I love it. I love it. Okay. All right. I'm worried now. You're going to cry. Maybe. Tissues. Get tissues ready. Good man. Okay. All right then, Matt. Who is number 1 then?
And in the tradition of making a proper mixtape, when you're restricted to a few amount of songs, we got to follow the rules. You got to start with a banger. You want to not peak too early at the middle. You want to soften it and drop back in. And then you got to finish really strong so people remember it.
Okay,
so,
I'm ready.
All the rules apply here. So this is where we're starting, and this is a big one. So number 1, Pup Up, a.k.a. Nick DeBellis, a.k.a. Junie, a.k.a. Nick, a.k.a. Nicky, a.k.a. that guy. He's a real character. This is my grandfather, my Pup Up. We lost him last year, and is truly a remarkable man. So it's my brothers, or one of my brothers, and my wife, and we're seeing him at the nursing home, and he's lost the ability to speak. And this guy is just sitting there. He's been the life of the party our entire lives. Very compressed generations in my family. Like, I was at this guy's 50th birthday party. I was there when he was retired. When he goes into the hospital after he quits smoking to have his quadruple bypass surgery. One of my favorite memories is we go to the hospital and they walk us in and they open up the door to take us into the room where the first people are going to see him after this procedure outside of my gram. And they open the door, the nurses, here he is. He just came out of surgery. He just woke up. Be quiet. And he's not in the bed. And we're like, nurse, he's not here. And then we hear his voice. And he's on the ground in the gurney with his butt hanging out in the air. And there's all these screws around him and all this metal panels and stuff. And we're like, Pup, what are you doing? And he had snuck out into the hallway and he had stolen a maintenance person's tool belt. And there was a light above him in the ceiling in the hospital bed that was shining into his face and driving him crazy. So he stole a screwdriver and he was literally taking apart the wall in the hospital that he had mapped the cord back to so he could unplug the light that was annoying him. And this is just the way this guy operated. And he thought this was hysterical. And the nurse is like, you can't be out of bed. And now we have to put this room back together and call the electrician. And he was like, well, maybe just make the light not shine on my face right now in this damn
amazing.
hospital. So we're in the nursing home. He can't talk. He can't make us laugh. And so we're just kind of doing that awkward silence thing that you do when somebody's in this position. He starts doing this thing. He's got his hand over his mouth and he's going like this. And I'm like, what are you doing? And and all of a sudden the eyes, he does one of these, where he looks up. And then I realized, I'm like, are you lighting a cigarette? What are you miming? And then he get big old smile on his face and he just goes like this. He just goes and in the room, and it slays. We're all dying. We're all laughing so hard, and then we're all crying because even when the guy can't talk, he just wants to entertain this room around him. I think about this guy and how present he was in every single moment. I think about his combination of extreme OCD and ADHD, seeing that light in the wall and knowing he had to take it apart. Literally, a month before he passed away, he got sick and passed away, I had to go get him out of a tree. He was 88 years old. He was in a tree with a chainsaw and nobody could talk him out of the tree. I had to go support the ladder and get the man out of the tree with the chainsaw. And even then, he wanted to finish cutting stuff up. Extreme OCD and ADHD, but so focused on the moment and how he made other people feel in that moment, right down to his last days. He was trying to make us laugh. It's a beautiful, beautiful man.
I can just sense the energy that's coming off you talking about him. It's you always feel people are going to be I don't know, towards the end, they just lose their vitality. But he sounds like he never did. He just had it all the way through. And
He
that's
told me in the nursing home, I wrote an essay about this. It's online. It's actually, I think I have it saved up on my LinkedIn. And he told me we didn't know if he would recover. It was before they found some other cancer that was spreading and some other stuff that was going on. And we're in the like the recovery part of the hospital. They were figuring out if he was eligible for a surgery or not. And we're sitting there, and I brought him coffee, and it's my gram, my wife, my Aunt Patty, they're all there. And he just, like, we're sitting there, and he's just kind of looking out the window, and it's still sunny. And he was just like, all the light on a summer's day, it never ends. Best thing in the world. And like, I walked out of there thinking that, and still think of that, like, brings a tear to my eye, chokes me up just thinking of it. It's just pure vitality all the way up until the end. So I got to tell you this too. So
Go
my
on.
gram, wonderful woman, she's still with us. She's the one who made this hat. One of
Great
one.
hat.
She's still knitting those. She loves making stuff like that for the family. And then this sweatshirt that I'm wearing says Ocean City, New Jersey. This is where his ashes are buried, out to sea. Was just out there a couple of weeks ago with my wife to just pay our respects. Right before he died, I was there, the place he was going to be buried. I didn't know it. I took this picture of the sun right off this pier. And I went back, I showed it to my grandma. I was like, look, it looks like the hearts are in a cloud right over this thing. That's where we're burying your grandfather.
Amazing.
And so both of them remind me how important it is to be present and enjoy every single moment, even when the darkness is bearing down on you.
And do you feel like, I don't know, does he get bigger in your mind at certain moments in your life? Like, does he come to you when you're at your weakest or your fullest, or both?
He comes at both. And it's the reminder again about, like, at the lowest point or the best point, this guy always had a question. He always had something going on. He was always saying something outlandish. There was always a joke. There was always a song. There was always something in the moment. And I catch myself either when I'm doing something crazy and my wife will be like, that's a lot of puff up right now. Maybe like dial that back. Because she got to know him really well too. And he just shows up in that spirit. And I will, like, every single morning we see the sunrise on my block, and it's either I'm walking the dogs or dropping my wife to work. I go outside, and like that sun hits me on how it comes down, and I think of him, and it's just a reminder every time I see a bright sun that it's like, yeah, this guy's watching out for me, and it's just telling me to be present in that moment and make somebody else around me smile. And it doesn't matter how good or how bad anything's going. It's just like, yeah, whatever.
Just there, yeah.
Be present for a second, will you, Matt?
Yeah. And that idea of being present, I mean, I think we share the same love of this, which is this idea of really giving somebody your attention.
Yeah.
And this podcast, and all podcasts really, I think as a medium, people are really taking to them because people do want to get into things. They do want to listen to long form conversation. They do want to listen to people who are actually connecting and being real with each other for a moment. And it sounds like that's how he lived his life completely. And that combination of OCD and ADHD, wow, okay, that's a lot. I imagine he was quite a handful sometimes as well.
Oh, he was a handful. And there are a great many stories. Well, we will not spend the entire list talking about them, but rest assured, there are a great many stories. And his celebration of life, I mean, to see that many people in a room laughing and crying all next to each other, telling, like, oh my God, you weren't at so-and-so's wedding. You never heard the time he did this. Or I got a million of them. They're wonderful.
Well, before we move on to who's number two, then I'd like to pause on that because I talked to someone recently about, what's true legacy and, this right now. And I imagine, you talk about him all the time. And if I have an ambition with the people that I've sort of met along the way, I suppose I'd like to be mentioned once or twice after I'm gone. That would be quite nice. I'd like to feel like I've had a little bit of an effect on some people. Quite what they'd say, I don't know, but right. I hope it's something similar, actually.
I think about that a lot, and I think about, like, it's not, he didn't leave a great inheritance or whatever, like something many people would look at, especially in my industry, in my part of the world. It's like, that guy didn't leave, and I didn't want a dime from that guy. Like, my cherished memories from him are like seeing this is not to embarrass my grandmothers, but it would be like they'd get the coupons from the church to like pick up something from like the food pantry. It'd be doing something special, and you'd get your stuff, and it'd be like, oh, we got our special stuff, and then they'd make it a point to like. Before we moved back to this area, my youngest brother was always in the area. I have this video saved on my phone of being like, Pop just dropped food pantry / groceries and random stuff. He's unpacking this bag, and it's like a random ham, a random pack of like canned thing of carrots, and he does the whole bag. He gets to the bottom. At the bottom of this bag is a single Lucy of his beer, of a can of Budweiser, and it's like. If all that guy left was that one video that I've had saved on my phone for like 7 years right now, because it's the funniest thing in the world to us. Where,
Amazing.
At the end of the day, he was like to my brother Pat, make sure you got this loose Budweiser just in case you need it at all times. Stories. We'll always talk about that, man.
Yeah, and I know you're. We might come on to this. We might come on to some of your sort of writing that you do, but I know that storytelling and story making is quite a big sort of feature of the work that you do as well. All right. Well, listen. I love the sound of him, Nicky, whatever. He sounds
you
great.
Got it.
May he
Pop
rest
up.
in peace. Pop up.
Rest in peace. Pop up.
All right. Well, then, let's see. Who's number 2 then, please?
So number 2, we're switching to the other side of the family. Grandma Ziegler, Grandma Joe, just Grandma. She. So this is my dad's side of the family. Pop-up was my mom's side, and we lost my Grandma Joe about 5 years ago now, and still have Grandpa with us. He's in his mid to upper 90s now. He's doing sharp as a tack. Love that man to death. But this story thing that you brought up, what's funny is if Pop-up was the living embodiment of story and just the actions and what you do. I wanted to tell you this story about my grandmother. So in 7th grade, because I'm sure, whatever your equivalent of middle school is where you grew up, 12-year-old, it's 12 to 13 is not a comfortable state of your development as a human. I had the wonderful experience of around that age, 7th grade, basically going from the school system that I'd been in, the public school system. My mom got a job in a private school, which the good part was free tuition. We got to go to this school as faculty kids. That was a huge, huge break, really altered the path of my life, candidly. Wonderful, wonderful opportunity. But my mom was a 7th grade English teacher when I got there.
Ouch.
Not a good, as if it wasn't awkward enough. And I'm used to like the smallest classroom I was ever in had like 33 other kids in it leading up to this point. Now I'm in this private school and it's like, oh, there's 10 kids in your class for like a English class or whatever. And your mom's the teacher. So map all that awkwardness over. So my mom's my teacher. Horrible for both of us, by the way, not just me. Like great opportunity, but also disastrous entry point. So she's teaching something on Shakespeare. I'm pretty sure it was Merchant of Venice, not positive. Forgot to ask her in advance of this conversation to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So she's teaching Merchant of Venice, and I have to write, I say a paper, but it's 7th grade. So it's probably like 5 paragraphs, not 5 pages or something. And I have to write it about a character, and I have to have this thing. And normally when you're reading like Shakespeare for the first time, you might go to your parents and say, hey, I need some help, especially in a pre-internet era. This is like the early 90s here. So I go and I'm like, Mom, what am I supposed to do? I have to write this paper, but who do I ask? And she's like, well, we're going for Thanksgiving or whatever we were going for to my grandparents. She was like, ask Grandma Joe, because Grandma Joe was a high school English teacher. And so we get to Grandma's house, and Grandma pulls 13-year-old me aside when I tell her I have this question about Shakespeare. Like the eyes light up. Loves Shakespeare. I don't know this at 13. I know this later in life. Like loves, adores Shakespeare. She pulls this book off the shelf that is like, you get your PhD studying Shakespeare, you have this book. And it's literally like a critical analysis of Shakespeare. She's like, what are you writing about? I'm like, I want to write an essay on Shylock. She's like, okay, well, there's more than one way to interpret the character. Let me show you this thing from the book. So she hands me this book. She opens it up to the page, and it's basically, here are 2 completely different ways to interpret this character inside of this book. And I literally think my brain fell out of my head. It's the first time I encounter this like adult knowledge of art criticism.
Yeah.
And that this can exist as a meta layer over something that's already as rich and as complicated and as celebrated as Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And she's literally like, here's this character. He could be the bad guy, or he could be a victim of like cultural design. And you can argue it from either perspective. And here's two separate, competing, completely valid arguments for you to draw from, for you to write your essay on. She would, and I get like an A on the paper, or probably a B plus. I don't think my mom would have given me an A because nepotism and all that. You know, it's a different era where that was not celebrated. But this person, and for my entire life, would be. She would never let you get away with an easy answer to something. And she was always pushing you to learn more, ask more questions, think more deeply about it. So I have another, like, this is a funny thing. So she gives me this book. She retires and she goes to Ireland to basically map her side of the family tree from the family history. And spoiler alert, don't be jealous. Apparently I'm like third cousins with the main girl from the Cranberries, also R.I.P. But every time a Cranberries song comes on, I will say that's my cousin.
Okay.
And it's probably because everybody's related to everybody if you have any Irish heritage, if you map it back a couple generations, because the size of the country. But so I'm literally like I think I was in middle school still. I was way too young to drink. And what does she bring me? She brings me Ballads from the Pubs of Ireland. That's the book. And fantastic.
That's incredible. You know, Shakespeare, Ballads from the Pubs of Ireland. I don't see the problem.
I was already a music nerd, thanks to her son, my Uncle Tim. I was already a very large Pogues fan and stuff like that. And I have this beautiful handwritten note that I've saved all these years. The bluebird's a special thing. Every time I see a bluebird, just like every time I see a sunrise, I get all choked up thinking of her. But she ends up writing this note where she tells me this story that she learned in the pubs in Ireland and doing this family tree about like how basically what the kids were allowed to do as jobs inside of the pub. And in this note, she like very poetically explains like how this kid's job would be to take this like stick of butter and rub it inside of the whatever the bucket was that would basically of beer that you would go to pick up for dad to bring home. And you would do that to control the head on the beer and like line it with the butter. I'm like, who's teaching an eighth grader, like a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old about like Irish pub techniques to bring your parents beer, and just talking to you on that level about something where like the world is a rich and wildly entertaining and wonderful place.
I love the kind of, I suppose the polarity of that is like literally and everything in between, right? It's like from the critical thinking and the depth and layers and layers and layers of that to how to serve the perfect pint. I'm kind of, when you were speaking, I was thinking, did she teach you that thing where you take beer mats and you flick them up with your fingers and catch them and see how many you can do? That's next level. If you can do that. That's the
next level stuff.
If she taught you that, then respect.
She didn't teach me that. She had moved on to wine pretty much exclusively by the time I was old enough for these things. But yeah.
Fair enough. I love that because to have somebody in your life, in all seriousness, to have someone in your life that's got that breadth of interest, that to me shows that, they're obviously valuable in themselves, but people who deeply understand their subject, that is something special in itself. But somebody who can take the whole gamut of life and go have just as much passion and excitement about the pubs of Ireland as the great bard. I love that. She sounds amazing.
And she would never, so something I always think about with her is she never talked down to you.
Yeah.
So she would literally pull this collegiate level Shakespeare critical analysis book to answer a question for a 7th grader and just be like, you've got this. Like, you're smart. What's
just showing
the
you the way. Yeah.
Here it is. It's right here. Just come on, dive in. What are you scared of? Who do you think is smarter than you that you're not willing to do this? Amazing. And that's a really important lesson that I think about a lot. Well,
so far you've been very blessed with the elders in your life. So, Nikki and Grandma Joe so far. All right, I'm listening. I'm very intrigued now to hear who number 3 is.
All right, number 3. Remember, mixtape rules are applying here. So this one caught me off guard. I just found out we lost this guy literally a couple of weeks ago, and this one hurt on a different level. So this is Ray Del Pryor, aka Stingray, aka just Ray. And Ray was my guitar teacher and one of my main music teachers also around the same age, basically probably like 5th, 6th grade is when I met Ray and started to work with him. But he really shaped my life. The thing that I learned from Ray that I don't think anybody else ever could have taught me was I'd taken some guitar lessons. I started very young. I started when I was kindergarten, 6 years old. And the first guy I had was just like the guy in the local music shop. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know this for a fact, I'm pretty sure like he played in a local polka band or something.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically the dorkiest, nerdiest, uninspiring guy that you could have. And I played guitar because Pop-Up that we talked about first, because of this smashed generations in my grandparents were in their 20s when they had my parents. My parents were both the oldest. They had me when they were in their early 20s. So like I grew up around all their siblings and everybody else. It was just this awareness. Parties at my Pop-Up's house would basically include all my mom's brothers and sisters with guitars out, like singing and laughing and drinking. And I wanted to play guitar since I was a kid because these are the people I'm around. They're having a good old time. My picture on Twitter, like my profile picture, is actually like me and a group of my aunts and uncles when a kid, I'm like 3 years old with this plastic guitar. And it's a picture of me in that setting. So I always wanted to play guitar. So dorky teachers aside, I just for some reason don't quit, like stubborn OCD, ADHD. I don't quit. And then sometime around like 5th-ish grade, there's a change in, I don't know, where, like the music store we go to or something. And there's this other guy teaching and I talk to this guy or get introduced to this guy, or maybe I get suggested, you should try him as a teacher. And I go and I meet this guy and, you know, like leather biker hat, like leather vest, big potch stomach, and just like, you'd have to know people from this area. And if you did, you'd know exactly what I was talking about. It was just where in Northeastern Pennsylvania I grew up. And it's like, all right, what do you want to play? And I'm like, well, I'll play like rock and roll songs. I'll play stuff on the radio. If you're asking me what I really want to play, nobody had asked me that before. But now here's this guy and he's asking me, what do you really want to play? And it's like, okay, well, let me show you how to play it. Again, kind of like Grandma Joe, where it was, let me take this at your level. And Ray, as I came to find out, so working, traveling musician, doing all sorts of stuff. He came up in an era playing like jump blues. So I learned to play all the Louis Jordan. I learned to play all the old BB King. I learned to play all this stuff from him and that like jazz blues crossover zone. But then he put me on to stuff like Freddie King and Albert King and Jimi Hendrix and Curtis Mayfield. And we learned all the rock stuff. So I learned the Ozzy and the Led Zeppelins and all the other things. And no matter what, and the Offspring and Green Day and all the stuff of the 90s and the era and whatever else, he taught me that you can literally just take something and learn to play it yourself. You don't need to go get a book. You don't need to hire somebody to do it. He taught me the skills to actually teach myself.
Yeah.
This guitar that's right behind me is out today because I wanted a dirty, like nicotine stained yellow Telecaster my entire life. Because I grew up taking lessons after the music store and Ray's basically like converted basement in his like 3-story house that was like at the ground level that was probably supposed to be a garage, and he converted to a bar and a room to give lessons out of. And he had one of these tellies, like an original one. He had like an actual legitimate 60s telly, not the knockoff 2000s one I finally bought when I was in college. But these things have this like cigarette cover. So it's this metal piece that at the end down all the way at the end, like before the pick guard, this metal piece covers it. And they would call it like, you know, an ashtray because guys would literally take it off and use it as an ashtray. Yeah. Mine did not come with the ashtray on it, but he had one. And I remember taking these lessons and I remember him like showing me John Coltrane for the first time, being like, we're going to transcribe. I want you to figure out how to play the solo on Mr. PC. And here's, you know, the special tape deck that you could slow the tape down a little bit because again, you don't need a book to do this. You can learn anything if you just put some time into it. And so I'm sitting there slowing the tape down, you know, 2.5 speeds, tuning the guitar down so I could try to play this. And he's got that cigarette thing stuffed ashtray, you know, smoking guy to me. Maddie, you're doing that wrong, Maddie. You're doing that wrong. He'd be like, you know, and then you're working on it. He'd be like, he'd get up and he'd go take a call. And he'd be on the phone with his friend from last night. And he'd be saying things that no kid of that age should ever hear adults talking about. But it's like, I'm learning Coltrane, I'm learning punk rock stuff, and he's telling me I can do anything and I don't need any teacher. I can teach myself this. And again, just throws you into the world.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the word that came to my mind was like immersive. like you
Immersive.
were just immersed in it. And I think that has a whole different level of absorption when you are actually immersed in music, in the culture, in the way of being. And it sounds like he was somebody who lived music, didn't just do it. You know what I mean?
No, he made a career out of it. He was the first person I met, because then I went on to play with like people who did other things too. That were professional musicians, but then professional other things. No, this guy was like, to do what I do, I have to teach, I have to do solo gigs, I have to do band gigs, I have to do sit-in things. And slowly that awareness crept up where I was like, oh no, he lives this all day, every single day. Also the first person I met who did that, like uncompromisingly, was just like, no, this is what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Complete immersion. I love that word for it. That's a really beautiful way to frame Ray.
And also when you were speaking, I was remembering, I got a musical background, as you know, and I spent way too much time in smoky bars. And I used to play with a guitarist who would do it, but just before he did his solo, he'd take the lit cigarette out of his mouth, and he had, like the strings at the end where it's just
you tuck
clipped
it in the headstock at the top.
stuck it in the headstock,
Right.
just finish his solo, take it back out, carry on.
So people don't, you see like Eddie Van Halen do that and you think it's cool or whatever. Or you see like, the guy in your band do this. What I never understood, I was never a smoker. I was in a lot of smoky bars, and I saw people do this. There's a lot between the nut and the tuning pegs where they would tuck the cigarette when they would do this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tension there. Like that is a very delicate thing to take something as frail as a cigarette and pull it in and out of that thing, especially if it's still lit. That is one of those, that's like the equivalent of the cigarette that hangs on the end of the lip. And you're like, how does that not fall? The touch required, the amount of practice that you'd had to do that. I was always really amazed by that.
Probably more practice than the solo. But
honestly, probably more practice than the solo and getting the cigarette in the headstock.
Well, here's to Ray, because when you meet someone like that, it kind of, again, it's great good fortune, because music obviously is still so much a big part of who you are and what you do. And I think that's his legacy, isn't it? So I think, cheers to Ray and all of his type. Those that dedicate their whole lives to their art, come what may. I think they occupy a special place in all our hearts, don't they? So here's to him.
Here's to Ray.
Okay, number 4. Let's go. Who's number 4?
Number 4. So this is in my journey. So like from playing in bands and doing the touring thing and the studio thing and everything else, sometime around 25-ish years old, 23, I basically burn out completely. I say I want a really boring job, and I think of, people keep telling me I should be in business. I don't know what that means because I didn't study business or anything. I didn't realize at the time that like all the music stuff was actually running businesses. I just didn't think of it that way. So I'm like, all right, a business job. I guess I get a finance job, and I'm looking for finance jobs. I just want insurance. And I get a job in a bank as a part-time teller. And that is like my gateway into financial services. That job lasts all like 2 weeks, by the way, because I'm a terrible teller. See, again, OCD and ADHD. I'm supposed to balance this drawer. I'm supposed to talk to these people, and I got to do all this mental math, and what disaster. But I figure out there's one guy who doesn't look like he hates his life in this branch. No disrespect to my fellow employees. They're all very lovely people. In fact, that some of the teller ladies are some of the greatest women I've ever known in my life. I say that the most genuine way I can possibly mean it. The guy who was the financial advisor in the office, I was like, what's that guy do? I want that. That seems like a job I could have. I don't want to be a branch manager. I don't want to be these other things. How do I get his job? And I finally get his job, or, into the training program for this job. It's right before the financial crisis. Spoiler, I do not know this at the time, but I get this job right before the financial crisis. And the first day I have the job, and I'm getting admitted into this training program, coming out of the bank, and I got sat in this room, and the thing when you're in your 20s and you meet the 40 or 50-year-old, and you can tell you don't like them, but you feel like you're supposed to like them because clearly they've figured out something that you haven't figured out yet. Can you relate to this feeling?
Keep going. Not yet.
So it's just I'm something's wrong in this room. But at the same time, I meet this guy, Sean. This is number 4, Sean Morrissey. I meet this guy, Sean, Sean's my age, and I can tell I don't like this person teaching this class for reasons that we won't get into, but I figure out later, where it's just like, he's just a crummy person. But I meet this guy, Sean, and Sean is totally engaged with me. And Sean and I spark up a friendship in 5 minutes before and after this little class in this cramped office. Within a few months, I have, because again, the financial crisis is starting and I just don't know it yet because it's literally like 2007. I have been unceremoniously let go of the job for missing one of my training tests by 1 point. I've been accepted at another firm. I ended up at the other firm, and Sean just keeps in touch with me. He does that like weird, rare thing with people that if they're not your friends from grade school or college, he just sends me a text, or he just reaches out with a phone call, or he just shows up where I'm working, even though he works at a competing company. He's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And then when the crisis happens, our companies the company I left, the companies still at, end up merging. And we end up in the same training program again. And this time, instead of being like 10 of us, there's 100 of us. But then over the next few weeks, the 100 of us basically turns into 5 of us because they let everybody go. And Sean and I somehow figure out a way to survive. In the midst of that, and I can't, we moved a couple of months ago. We lost Sean a few years ago. And I have his funeral service card. He was 39 when he passed away. We were the same age when he passed away. We find in 2008, and this was kind of life altering. I can't believe I have this like handy after moving and not his funeral card. It's driving me crazy right before this to find it. But it's this document here. It's an advisor's guide to behavioral finance. And what's wild is this happens right before the world ends. And what I got so fascinated by this, and then all this literature that came after it, was I was trying to learn this industry from the inside out. And I watched all these really, really smart, successful people after a couple years or less of being fascinated and blown away by all they had done and accomplished. I watched them all be wrong. I watched the whole world financial system almost end in front of me. And I was like, wait a second. I just found out what a lot of this stuff was. And you were very, very confident. And you were wrong? And stuff like this was the first place that I was like, wait, this explains that, we all just got the same monkey brain operating up here. We're susceptible to all the same stuff. And it sparked my learning again about evolutionary psychology and just behavioral psychology and then behavioral economics and all this stuff. And Sean would regularly come back to me and he'd ask me about this stuff. He'd be like, "You're the only person I know who actually like goes out and reads the book. We have the conversation about the thing and then you go read the book." And he would always call me and ask me, like, "What are you reading? What are you thinking about? Tell me how you're explaining this to somebody." And he was a friend who was a peer who just genuinely believed in me and my insights all the way along. So we almost left the company together. We almost started something new on one, if not two actual occasions. About a year before he passed away, we had this text conversation that was spawned by a post I had written. He was one of the few people who knew I was posting stuff anonymously on the internet. And he read the post. I didn't even know he was reading these posts. And he reached out to me, and Sean was just like, "Whoever said this thing that inspired this, like, that person is bullshit. Like, you need to not listen to that person. Like, you're doing this." And I was starting to explore at that point, leaving the company I was at. And I was like, I think I'm going to break out on my own finally. I was like, if I do this, this is our chance. You're finally going to come with me. You're going to finally do this. And we allowed ourselves to dream like that for a lot of years, for about 15 years together as professional peers. And even though it didn't work, he was always right there behind me, always pushing. And I've worked with a lot of people. It's a very short list of people that I can look at and say, Sean got me through that entire stretch of life by just pushing and caring and reaching out and doing the work. That's really friggin' hard to do in a relationship, especially in your 20s and 30s when all that life stuff is going on.
Okay. Well, I don't even know where to start with that. That feels to me like somebody who's come into your life unbeknownst to you at exactly the time you needed him. And probably at the time you just thought, he's a cool guy, I like him. It's nothing. This is no biggie. This is just how it is, right? And there's something about losing him young that kind of will probably forever exaggerate those short years anyway and make them even more indelible on your head and heart because they were so brief. And I can relate to that a bit. I had a business partner for about 10 years, and it almost felt like he just walked with me for those 10 years that I really needed him. And he's no longer with us too. And he died way too young as well. And I think about him all the time. You know, he's always on my mind. And I go back to the sort of key moments, and they're just all the more precious because they're not to be repeated. And they're all the more precious because, you know, his name doesn't come up on my phone anymore. And, you know, people who die young but make such a big impression while they burn so brightly, I don't know, it's almost like they were passing through, right? They weren't ever meant to be here for a long time. They're meant to come and make a huge impression and then move on. And that's what it felt like when you were talking about Sean. I don't know if you relate to that, but that's how it feels like when you speak about him.
I completely do. And I completely do in the sense that I didn't know why he was showing up when he showed up or how. And then by the act of continuing to show up, it's also very surreal that we met starting off in a business and we're so committed to figuring out ways. When I say we got close, like there was one time we were very close to leaving. It was me and him and like two other people on the outside that already had something started. And it was like we got into very advanced talks on this new business venture starting. And kind of in the seventh inning, to use a baseball term, I felt uncomfortable. It was a bad vibe check with one of the people. And it ended up being right. Found out like a couple years later that was the right decision. It was a character call. It was one of those weird things. This all makes sense on paper. This guy is super sharp, super compelling, super charismatic. But it was just, there was a couple interactions where I was like, there's an ethical corner that something feels off here. And I told Sean, and Sean was upset about it. But Sean ultimately was like, well, if you're not doing it, I'm not doing it. And we plotted like that so long. And then for me to be finally making that leap and changing, and that's when he was gone. But like, I don't know if I hung on as long as I did or built up the skill set I did without somebody like him to encourage me, to be there and support me. And then even when you forget he exists or you drift apart, without fail would snap back. I'd be sitting somewhere and my phone would ring, like you said. And it's like, you see his name on the phone, you pick it right up because it was always just, you know, an old friend that you can just lock back in an eighth of a second.
Well, I'm very sad for him that he didn't get more of his life to carry on with all of that. And I'm very sad for you too, because I think he sounds pretty special. And
he was a special guy, Sean Morrissey.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Well, mixtape number 5. Let's go.
Is it.
You said you're going to finish hard. What is it?
This is it. We got to get the tissues ready for this one.
Okay.
So I never met this one. Well, I did. I met this one once. Met him once. Name is Frank, best known as Frankie, formerly known as Frankie Bozek. So 19 years old. I am like just gone to college. I'm a December baby. So like one semester deep in college, just turned 19. And my dear friend Jackie was a couple years older than me. Jackie was the friend when I was in high school who was like my friend Eileen, who was my best friend, and her like best friend, or however you stack these things in high school, was Jackie. Jackie was 2 or 3 years older than me. So Jackie had a car. Very, very important when you're 15 years old or 14 years old to have the friend with the car. Jackie was the friend with the car, which meant so many formative memories, experiences, and other things were like getting picked up by Jackie and Eileen and going somewhere in the car. So Jackie calls me up and says, hey, Matt, or maybe this was over our Christmas break. We're all home from college and stuff. He's like, hey, Matt, my cousin loves your band, my high school band. So I was in this high school band. We were a ska band. So thanks to the specials and madness and all the great things you imported to us. And we loved ska music. We loved stuff like this because it was this melting pot where we could play rock and jazz and hip hop and punk and all this stuff and fuse them together. And we were this like 8-piece band and, you know, various, like sometimes we were 7 pieces, sometimes we were 11 pieces, but it was a great experience. And I learned my business chops with that band. I'm lifelong friends in that band and whatever else. And anyway, she was like, my kid cousin loves your band. It's about to turn 16. Always stealing my CDs of you guys and everything else. Will you guys play at her 16th birthday party? I'm going to get a couple of bands, help her get a couple of bands to play at it. We're going to do it at the hotel downtown And will you do it? I'm like, Jackie, of course. Like, no problem. If I can get the guys all in town, since again, we all just went away to college, I'll see what I can do. But I think so. So we get together, we play this 16th birthday party, the Sweet 16. And because of the era, this is like year 2000-ish, 2001. Because of the era, it's like the band before us is the hardcore band. And they're playing like that, like rah, 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 like that type of hardcore. And the band that plays after us is like the darlings of the local scene, kind of like punk poppy. Think a little bit like Elvis Costello and Blink 182 rolled up together. So, that type of like punk rock. But we're in the middle and we're doing stuff, and like we're covering a Stray Cats song, and we're playing some big band swing, and then we're playing these other variations of stuff we do. And then we're influenced by the Ramones and the Specials and all these things. And the kids love us. Tried and true. We were a great band for what we were, high school kids and college kids at this point. But we finished the set, and all the adults are coming over to us. And the adults are coming up to us, and they're like, these other bands are fine, but you guys are really cool. This is really special. Like, please say you're going to keep doing this because you're talented, and this is great, and this is fun. And that thing from adults saying this to me, it wasn't lost on me at that moment, and it just imprinted on my head. So now flash forward, it's 20 years later, and Frankie Bozek's one of the guys who's telling me this at this party, this guy. But it's 20 years later. COVID has just set down upon us. I'm visiting with the guy who's the bass player in this band, and we're sitting down, we're having some beers, and we're just chatting, reminiscing. He's like, remember that party we played? And you remember how at that party, all the parents came up to us and loved us? And isn't it funny? Like, we're the parents' age now, probably, and we're joking about this. And I go, hey, it's like, you know what's funny is I've had this suggestion on my phone on Facebook for like 6 months. And it keeps saying like, you know, this person, you know, this woman, this Val. And I can't figure out how I know her because I see like 30 people around her that I know, but I'm like, I didn't go to school with you. I don't know who this is. I was like, you know who this person is? This is the 16-year-old from that party. And you just cracked it when you reminded me of this thing. And I realized we're talking about all these people. I'm like, they're all at that party. Like, you just cemented this memory from 20 years ago. So I go and I click the add friend button on Facebook, and like half an hour or not long, maybe a day later, I get a message from Val. And Val goes, hey, you probably don't remember this. You played at my 16th birthday party. So I know. The adults all loved us. I was just talking with my buddy John about it. She's like, yeah, she's like, you're right. Frank, in particular, my dad thought you guys were great. In fact, after your party, he stole my CDs. And he kept saying, like, those other bands were fine. She'd be like, what about Bedford? They're the coolest band ever. And they were the coolest band ever. And he'd be like, they're fine, but like this 8 Ounce Joe band, they were really, really good. That was the name of the band. And Frank was her dad, and her dad died about within the last 10 years. And so we started this conversation. She's telling me about her dad. She's telling me this stuff. And it was just text back and forth. I was out of a long, nasty relationship. She was outside of halfway across the country, outside of her own relationship. So she starts looking in storage, and she finds this picture. I'll show you this. This hangs in the wall right on the inside of our house. We'll see if the glare can come off of this.
Yeah, I can see
Those
that.
two people in the middle, that's me and her.
Okay.
Neither of us remember
on that
this.
party. That was at the party.
This is at that party. Well, that's actually like right after the party. Neither of us, this is my dear friend Gary who's in the band, her dear friend who was not in the band, but actually she met both of us on this exact same night on her 16th birthday party. She goes, hey, you never guess this. I found this picture in my storage unit. And so neither of us remember this picture being taken. And we start talking more and we're like, wow, isn't it funny? We look like we're best friends in this picture. That's the one time we ever met 20 years ago. We look like we're the best friends in that picture. And so a few months after that, maybe 6 months after that, we're both back in the hometown for something. And we're like, hey, you're in town. Okay, let's get together. And that's how I met my wife.
No way.
So her dad loved us, and I never got to meet him except for that one time. And if it wasn't for the parents loving us at that party and that being the thing that imprinted on my real good boy, John and I don't know if we have that conversation. And I don't know if we put it together. And I don't know if I ever clicked that button on Facebook with zero intentions of like anything, of just being like, oh my God, I just figured out who this is. This will make my friend Jackie laugh. That was literally like my thought adding this. Jack, you'll think this is a hoot.
That's wild. So the lady, I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit like I wasn't expecting that punchline.
Yeah, that's a turn.
So the lady whose birthday it was is now your wife.
So I played my wife's 16th birthday party.
Wowza.
When I had just turned 19 years old.
That is incredible.
About, a little less than 3 years apart. And I played at her 16th birthday party. That's the first day we met. She also met one of her other best friends that night, which is surreal. The three of us have all been together. At some point, the four of us in that picture are all getting together. My buddy Gary lives out in Arizona now. But so when we got married, so funny enough too on the music thing, so this is her dad's Rick Nielsen guitar pick.
Amazing.
And Frankie, my brother-in-law, who has his name, gave this to me on the day we got married. He brought me this. He was like, I know your dad loved the band. He was at the 16th birthday party too. He's like a year and a half younger than his sister. And he was like, he would have loved this. He'd be really proud of this moment, really happy. He's like, I've been holding this for a long time. Their dad loved Cheap Trick. He was like, I want you to have this.
Matt, honestly, I wasn't expecting that turn. And it's the stuff of like a rom-com. I mean, this is the stuff you see. Well be. It's the stuff you see made into this is like One Day or something like that. It's that kind of huge life event turn, kind of serendipity, but also the universe, and I mean everything mixed into one, and a beautiful love story. I love it. I absolutely didn't know you were going to say that. That's amazing.
And think like, if you don't have the parents who would be willing to say, like, if you don't have somebody like that in your life, and I know he wasn't the core or the only driving force in this, like her mom was involved too, and the grandparents were involved too. Other people all enabled that 16th birthday to be a special event. But just to say, like, sure, we'll get you the room at the hotel. And like, yeah, you want to have bands play? That sounds like a great idea. And not only do you want to have them play, like, we're interested in meeting your friends and hanging out and being around for all this stuff.
Yeah.
If she wasn't raised like that,
it never would have happened.
None of it happened. So I am forever indebted to Frankie Bozek for meeting my wife and telling a bunch of kids at a party that they're onto something, and that it's really we were the parents, the adults' favorite band at that Sweet 16.
As a mixtape goes, you did it. That was it. That's the mic drop right there. Well done. Oh,
we had to peak well. We had to peak well.
You definitely have peaked. That is a super story. I really didn't expect that punchline. Oh, okay. Well, that's warmed my heart completely. Okay. Well, listen. The next part of the format, if you like. So we've done the 5, and if I was to sort of summarize, I'd say wonderful elders in who we have, Nikki and Joe. I think Ray, from a point of view of just having the gift of that kind of passion for music, has obviously been a huge impact on you. And then Sean, I think, giving you that that legacy of living in the moment and being present, and just generally kind of opening the aperture of your life, your eyes, and just saying, like, it's all here for you now. Don't worry about the future. Just open your mind and open your eyes wide now. I love that. And then, of course, we've got Frankie Bozek, who can't believe that's a real story. So, but there's some common threads, not so obvious. Sometimes my guess is pretty obvious when you meet the person and you're talking to them. You can say, right, there are obvious traits here. I mean, I can definitely see your granddad in you, for sure. And obviously Ray's influential music. But do you have anybody, like when you look back over those 5, can you actually pinpoint and say those are the 5 or a handful of things that I can see in me as direct consequence of knowing those people and having them in my life?
So one thing I can say, and I think about this a lot, this goes back to the original question, and not to make this about social media and how we show up in the world, but whether it was Grandma Joe or Pup or certainly with like the adults in the music sense, and then the peer and Sean, in all these cases, meritocracy, cross-generational communication, like, doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, doesn't matter what you're doing, whatever else, so long as you do it well, and you show up and you speak the person's language across the table from you.
Yeah.
Show up at the 16th birthday party, even though you're 19, with your band, and be able to connect with, the parents in the corner in the same way that you connect with the other 16-year-olds who are excited you're there. Show up with Sean in like an industry that we're new in, that's in the middle of a crisis, and figure out to go out and like get clients and not get fired, and also go like, I'm not turning into this jerk in this corner because he's got the label of being the trainer and is, ends up being a dirtbag. And then same thing with like, with my grandparents, like they raised their kids, and not flawlessly, like there's messes along the way, but that doesn't mean you can't still punctuate wonderful and beautiful moments. And in very, very different separated experiences between, my grandma and papa on my mom's side and my grandma and my grandpa on my dad's side. I have the hyper intellectual side of the family, cross generation, and how they wanted to treat the grandkids. Then I have the pure experiential, with all the craziness that comes along with it. There's plenty of craziness, but the pure experiential side of the family, where it's just everybody get together, think about that moment, think about how we create this for each other, and like, why bother making it a bad time? Make it a good time. Every single one of those people.
Yeah.
Why would you be in your way and make this bad? It's too short.
I love that. And I can feel that in your own kind of, you have a very infectious energy yourself. But the words that come to my mind when you were summarizing is like, if you're going to do it with character, do it with integrity.
Absolutely.
Do it wholeheartedly, both feet in, don't leave anything off the table, and that's kind of, again, an ambition of all of us. I mean, I'm just picturing your granddad at the end having his last cigarette, even if it was in mime. He was living it to the end, and that's absolutely clear right through. So, go on.
My Gram tells the story about when he quit smoking, the last cigarette he ever had. She loves telling this story, and he's going in for the like quadruple bypass surgery, and he's like 50 years old, mind you. Like it's just insane, but he was living a pretty insane lifestyle. He used to joke how many breweries and distilleries went out of business when he cut back on his drinking because of him alone. So he's going into the surgery, and he's committed to go into this surgery and be done with smoking. So on the way in, he's finishing the last cigarette, and she was like, she walks through the automatic door, she turns around, and he had hung back for a second to take one big last giant breath of that cigarette, blows it out, snuffs it out in the ashtray, and was like, I quit smoking. Like, I quit.
And he knew that was his last one. He
knew that was his last one. I'm done. Okay. Doc says I can't do this anymore. I need this if I'm going to live another 10 years and I can at least go back to drinking. Like, he was just like, that's all you need to tell me. So I'm done. Okay. No big deal. I'll find other ways to have fun. And he did.
Amazing. All right. Well, okay. So we now come to the part where I like to ask my guests, how are you going to take some of this stuff forward? Or how do you feel that you're taking it forward? What are you doing to sort of honor these people and taking this, if we're talking about integrity and character and wholeheartedness, how do you recognize that in you and what you're going to do forward with that?
So this was a really great exercise, because when my papa passed away, I wrote an essay about him. It's called All the Light on a Summer's Day. And it's on my personal website. You can find it on LinkedIn, find it other places too, cultishcreative.com. And when I wrote that, it made me think of two things. It made me realize I was writing it not just for myself and not just to remember him, but also for my Gram, like she's still here. Also for like my aunts and uncles on that side of the family. Also for my cousins and other people who wrote him. Like, this is a deeply personal essay with him as a centerpiece, but it was about those values. And it made me think, I never wrote that essay about my grandma. I never wrote that essay about, now Stingray. And I don't talk about Sean publicly enough. I talk about Sean in private regularly, but I'm talking about him publicly enough. And with Frankie, with Hallie's dad, like, I didn't know him, but it doesn't mean I don't have an incredibly close relationship with her family. And how I think about this, if something that I choose to invest time in is to write and share stories and curate this stuff, coming on something like this to tell stories like this. Having my wife laughing at me this morning as like we're both crying because I'm like, I'm going to talk about your dad today. Is this okay? I feel like I have to ask you, not for permission, because I'm going to tell my story. So it's my side of a story. It's not his story. But like, is this okay? And so now we're both crying while I'm dropping her off for work in the morning talking about this. And I'm like, I think I'm going to bring a bunch of props. Is that weird? She's like, no, you have to bring a bunch of props. I'm like, all right. Time to get out the Ocean City hoodie and Graham's hat that I wear this hat all the time anyway. But the way I want to bring that in the world is just like, it's a reminder. If you don't keep telling these stories, they go away. So you better make the time to tell these stories and tell them often, or figure out ways to fit them into other cases. And then separately, the thing I really want to take in the world with my own personal work and everything else, this whole personal archive project I have and encouraging others to do it, is like, we all have these stories. They're in your head. You can either tell them or not. And the thing that gives them value and character is your reflection on that story. Like you're never going to meet my pup-up, unfortunately. You're never going to meet Stingray. Never going to go hang out at that disastrous, shady, dirty bar that Stingray's playing in when you come home from college. And he's like, Matt's here. And he's telling a bunch of people to shut up and find another guitar seat and sit in with them. And the rays of sun shine down on you through the thickly, cigarette-filled hair. And it's like, oh, you're working on some of that jazz stuff at college, aren't you? All right, let's try this together. You're never going to meet those people. So all I can do is share with you my reflections of their light bouncing off me and remind other people they can do the same thing. And I think that's a really important message to put out in the world these days.
Oh, gosh. And more needed now than ever, I think. There's so much, there's so little. Let's be more positive. There's so little place for celebration of the goodness of us all. And I guess it's another reason why I started this whole thing, was I wanted to create a sort of a place for people to be honored and to tell their stories and the stories of the people that matter to them. And I love the idea of storytelling generally, and I know you do too, because I think it's how our ancestors communicated. It's how we've built all the constructs of our society. It's where we get our values from. It's where we get our sense of identity, our kinship. I mean, stories to me, I could have called this podcast Stories Are Everything. You know what I mean? It's the same thing in some ways. It's like, it's the people that we choose to honor that really shape everything, really. So yeah, I think that's a wonderful quest, and I'm there right with you, Matt.
Well, you're on this too, doing a show like this where you're asking people to reflect in this way. This is the most important part of storytelling, because we're not positioning stuff as ourselves as the hero or ourselves as the victim or ourselves in any of the roles, aside from, I'm a bystander from this person who influenced me in this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we learn to talk like that, it strips the ego out of it. It strips a lot of the other noise out of it. So I applaud this project. That's why I was so happy when you said, come on this. I was like, no, I have to contribute to this, because this is how we foster connection in the world, is by saying, it's not that hard. You can do this if you're willing to be a little bit open about it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. All right. Well, listen, I'll keep going then, because so far everyone has been so uniquely interesting. Aren't people the most interesting thing in the world? Okay. Talking of interesting people, my last question, as you know, I hope you've prepared, is who shall I speak to next and why?
So I've got several ideas on this one.
Good.
But am I allowed to give you multiple people? This is the other problem that you're talking to me. I told you at the beginning, I'm like one of these connection people. So it's like,
listen,
I got 10 people I want you to talk to.
People are my favorite thing. I'm a collector. So you carry on.
All right. Well, first off, basically anybody on that Just Press Record list that I've had as guests are an open door that I'm gonna send them a message. A fascinating one, I think, for you would be my friend Justin Castelli.
Okay.
Only because, like, this is the kind of guy Justin is. Justin's the guy that it's like, hey, what are you doing today? He's another person. He's like, in a weird way, Sean left my life and Justin showed up at the same time. Like very, very close, like within a year. And there's something about the role that Justin plays in my life as a friend that's very similar to the role that Sean played. And just as an encouraging, thoughtful, incredibly ambitious, but there's an earnest and a warmth about him that's rare. So I want to see Justin Castelli on here. And just a case in point, it's like, Justin, what are you doing today? It's like, oh, I gotta take somebody somewhere. Like, all right, I'm not gonna pry. Who you taking? It's like, oh, I got a client who needs an outpatient procedure at the hospital. I'm going to drive them there, make sure they get there okay. They don't have the right support network around them to do this. So, like, I'm their guy today. You're like, of course you're that person. And I have a feeling he's got some, between his dad and some coaches and other people he has had in his life, I'm thinking of people that I want to hear this story from.
Yeah,
the other person,
quite right.
Mark could introduce you to, but Sean Delaney would be another one.
Right.
Like how did Sean Delaney become Sean Delaney? Who are these 5 people? He's another one I would love to see on this show.
Okay, underlined them both. You can hear me with my pen.
I'll email you 15 more. This is the problem.
Oh, listen.
Created a monster.
Well, I know we've talked about me coming on Just Press Record.
Oh, you're coming.
I can't wait. I mean, for people who don't know this show, it's the premise, and you don't give a lot away, but I have listened to a few, is that you're going to pair me up with someone you think, oh, we're going to have an interesting conversation with. And then you host us. And we don't know who that person is until you just press record. And there we are.
Until you show up. And I have somebody pegged for you. So after this, I'm going to run some dates by you.
All right.
But actually, I have somebody that I think would be wonderfully entertaining. And if not, I have another backup person if the dates don't work. So I'm ready to introduce you to somebody. It's going to be a good time, Julia.
Well, Matt, listen, thank you for joining me today. I've loved hearing all about your 5 people. Mostly I've loved your hat. I honestly urge everybody who's not on YouTube right now and seeing this visually, there are props. There are good props, and the hat being the main one. So good old Grandma Joe. Could you nick me one?
Oh, this is Graham, a.k.a. Grammy. This is Pup-Up's wife.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
still with us, of course.
She's still with us. So love you, Grammy.
Put my order in.
You know that I'm still wearing this. And she gives me, like, if I show up at her house and I have a different hat on, because when it's really cold, I can't wear this hat. I get this weird thing where it gets really cold and I apparently get ear infections. This is my old person affliction now that I'm developing. So, like, if it's too cold, I have to wear a warmer hat than this. But this thing is great. It's got all these holes because the way it's knit and everything in it. So it breathes. So I can actually wear it indoors, or if I haven't taken a shower or something, I can throw it. She gives me crap when I don't wear this hat. So this is proof now because it's on the internet.
Okay.
I don't know if I can get this on Facebook or not where she'll see it, but I'm going to get her a link. Grammy.
We'll make sure. There will be clips that you can send her and she can get the evidence. So
I'll make sure she knows.
It's a great hat. Well, listen, thanks,
Julia.
Matt. Thank you very much. Take care. Well, that was Matt Zeigler, and I just loved that conversation. I think he's taken this concept to a whole new level. And I just love the thoughtfulness of it. I love the props and the storytelling and how he's just threw himself wholeheartedly into it. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And if you did, please like, review, share, subscribe, or get in touch. Maybe you'd like to tell me your 5 people. But until next time, please take care. All the best now. Bye-bye.